All right. As we always start off, hey, how you doing, Mr. Mudd? We can start off with our Pledge of Allegiance. I guess I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Anybody want to volunteer? Okay. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. You're on. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
When folks listen to that, they realize it's not democracy, it's a republic.
Yes. That's a point I've argued 1,000 times probably. Do we have anybody here that would like to volunteer to do the prayer, which I should have done first? Oh, there he is. I was looking for you over here, Pastor Jack. Everyone, this is Pastor Jack. This is his church. They have been a rock-solid venue for me for almost 6 years. They're great people. And we call him Slam now.
Don't have my street name of Fat Jack no more. Praise God. It's good to have everybody here. We're going to have a wonderful time, and I want to welcome our guest tonight. Man, you just speak the truth. It's a be good. Father, we just come before your throne in Jesus' name. And Lord, we thank you for this opportunity of being able to come in this republic, God, and to speak truth and to hear true facts. Lord, we pray today that you'd put your hands upon this meeting. Lord, that you would bless those here and bless those watching. And Father, we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I want to ask one thing. If you're watching by internet today, please join the group and like it and share it. Share it to all your friends, because the more information we can get out, the better. Thank you, and God bless you guys.
Thank you, Pastor.
There you go.
Also to the folks at home, when we get to the Q&A, if you will call, or not call me, text me a question at my phone number, which will be up here on the board, 580-670-0357. We'll put that number up there when we get to the Q&A. If you will text me your questions, I will ask the question and you can hear the answer live. Okay, also, I want to say a few words about Charlie Kirk. I have never had a public event devastate me emotionally as much as his murder has. I just turned 16 when JFK got murdered in Dallas, and that was a huge emotional bump in my life. But for God help me, this has been a bigger one. I don't know if it's I'm older or the fact that Charlie just was such a good man, and he was doing the Lord's work literally. He was more of a evangelist, a missionary, than he was political. In fact, I'm pretty sure he got into his political part of his life because of his service to Jesus and our Lord. But anyway, it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but I had tears in my eyes probably 25 or 30 times every time that showed a picture of his. What's that? They showed that picture from the TV studio where his daughter's running up and jumping in his lap. Anyway, and Lankford and a lot of other mainstream Republicans are saying, oh, we need to establish a dialogue. We need equity. There's violence on both sides. Excuse my language, but that is total bullshit. They're the ones doing the murdering. We've had 6 or 7 shooters, school shooters and whatnot in a row that are transgender, because those people are crazy. And they've gotten the society supporting and reinforcing their insanity. They're absolute narcissists. They believe anybody that doesn't fully sign on board with their perverted lifestyle, they're justified in killing them, whether they be second or third graders or somebody as nice as Charlie Kirk. I am convinced he would have been president someday. Anyway, excuse me for getting my own personal. I'm still trying to expunge this grief that I've had in me now for what, 3 weeks almost. So let's see, a couple of other introductions. Joe, little Joe here. Joe is the chair of the K County Republican. They meet the fourth Thursday, usually the Thursday prior to this meeting at Pioneer Tech. They have great speakers. Kendra Wesson spoke there yesterday or Thursday, and it's a meeting well worth attending. Did you want to say a few words? No, you already said it. Oh, okay. And like I said, we call him Little Joe for obvious reasons. I come up to about here on him. Okay. Are there any other remarks or questions at this point?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if anybody has any further comment on Ryan Walters leaving and his replacement and what the heck's going to happen.
I do. I think there was, first off, that total BS story about the nudes on the TV screen. I can't even imagine what kind of crap his kids had to put up with in school. Because you know every teacher in the school probably hated them because they're his kids. And I saw a short blurb that what happened to Charlie was part of his reason for stepping down. And I don't blame the hate that they're spewing against any real conservative, active person. And so evidently this group he's going to join is going to be fighting the teachers union. So that's a noble battle. I liked what he was doing. I'm sorry he's gone, but that's my comment. You got any comments on it?
I'll just say that that not just this one recent incident, but his kids have faced hardships at school with bullying and stuff like that. He and Katie have had constant death threats since day one. They can't hardly go anywhere without taking security with them, and I think that it just took its toll. It really did, and I think that he had an opportunity that came up with the new position. I'm not, this is all supposition for me. I really don't know. I tried reaching out to him. He's not the easiest person to get a hold of.
Oh, really? I hadn't noticed.
What a surprise.
Unless I text him about the movie Tombstone, and then he'll respond because he loves that movie. So,
Yeah, and that movie was all about gun control, by the way.
Yeah.
I do like the movie, but it's all about gun control.
So, anyways, but and that was kind of the take that Kendra had also when she came and spoke with us Thursday night. That it was just a combination of things. So, and don't get me wrong, I'm like a lot of us, I'm disappointed that he didn't finish the term, but I also totally understand. You spend 3 years just with a constant barrage, bombardment from from people like the Sean, whatever his name is, that
Sean Cummings, who spoke at one of my meetings.
Yeah, that came here, thought he was going to be all tough and mighty, and walked into a room full of conservative guns.
And we had a sheriff's deputy here at the door.
That was kind of funny, but people like that.
I run a tight meeting.
The liberal press, and you know, it's just been constant for him. And I texted him the other day. He hasn't didn't reply, but I said, "Man, you're a stronger man than I am. I wouldn't have lasted a year." So.
What about his replacement?
Who knows?
Does anybody know, or?
The governor will appoint it until the next election, is my understanding. Is that? Yeah. So it'll be whoever. I asked Kendra if she's applied for the job, and she kind of laughed and said yes, but she hadn't heard back yet, which she's not going to hear back, I'm sure.
Yeah, I saw a blurb that Randy Weingartner was happy.
Yeah.
Oh, the president of the teachers union or whatever?
Yeah, Dyke.
Yeah, that one.
Those are, you mean like in Holland?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
One quick thing, real fast.
Yes.
On your comment a minute ago about the whole democracy versus republic, I had to go to the OSSBA training camp in Oklahoma City for being a school board member, and the keynote address speaker at the first session was the president of OU. And man, if that man had said, "Our democracy," one more time, I was gonna rush the stage and choke him out.
No, that would have been
This is the
different.
president of Oklahoma
Yeah.
University
Yeah, well,
talking about our democracy, and it just
Okay.
was driving me nuts anyway.
yeah.
We know what education they're getting there.
Cindy?
Yeah.
Are you gonna need to plug into the system? Okay, Stephen, she's got a laptop she'd like to plug in. Could you give us a hand with that? Cause I know nothing about it. It's a new microphone. Yeah,
Yeah, it picks up better.
oh,
It picks up your voice better.
anybody else, I think, well, they're taking care of technical stuff. Any other comments or remarks or questions for me? Cause I know everything. I think I've told y'all before, neither one of my two ex-wives ever grasped the concept that I knew everything and was right about everything. Can you imagine?
You must be related to our president.
Yeah, I love watching Charlie Kirk's Prove Me Wrong.
Yeah.
It's just
He never got rude or aggressive with anybody.
just pull out facts, figures, percentages.
Yeah.
They're, I know that. Give me a hat.
Well, I'll give you an in-depth introduction. Cindy, I met Cindy a couple of years ago at OCPA down in Oklahoma City. She's our current state auditor. She's the one that's uncovered the stink at Epic Schools, Red Rock, all the $500,000 some odd dollars disappeared over there. She's done a great job. I think she'll make a great lieutenant governor if she wins the election, but also I wouldn't be upset if she got to stay in her current position longer. Oklahoma's been blessed to have her watching the books. Cindy Byrd, yeah, come on up. Everyone, let's give her a hand. You live in the city?
No, I live in Colgate. I'm a rural girl.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
we
I
appreciate
thought
you
you
making.
knew that,
No,
yes.
appreciate you making the drive.
Yeah, so before I get started, I'll just tell you, I had a beautiful 3-hour drive up here. Can I hold that microphone?
Sure.
I had a beautiful 3-hour drive up here, seeing all of Oklahoma from the southern part to the northern part. I've almost went from one end of the state line to the northern part of the state line. So it's great to be here with you this morning.
You're about 20 miles south of Kansas here.
Yes, I saw that. I thought, I might as well just go ahead and say I made it all the way north. Well, thank you for the invitation to speak. You are going to want to be able to see the PowerPoint up here. The first part of this message is going to be about what I've been doing for you as state auditor and the things that you need to know about that are risks to our freedom. Somebody taking your money and spending it for things that are not what this country was founded on is a risk to you. So I'm going to talk to you as your state auditor. Then I'm going to stop and I'm going to tell you why I'm running to be your lieutenant governor. So it is wonderful to be here with you today. This has been a very difficult time for America. We lost a great man. Charlie Kirk can never be replaced. But even as we grieve and comfort his widow, I am hopeful. I believe that this is a critical moment for Americans. We have an opportunity to recommit ourselves to faith, family, and service, the values that have made us a great people. Recently, we celebrated the 238th anniversary of the signing of the U.S. Constitution. And what I'm seeing is that more and more men and women of goodwill are standing up, exercising their right of free speech and peaceful assembly, and defending the Constitution with eloquence, resolution, and courage. America is strong when citizens like you take the initiative to lead at the local level, and when neighbors band together working shoulder to shoulder to find solutions that make sense for their families. It's that same sense of duty that moves some to join the police force or the military. But make no mistake, whether it's in business, medicine, education, or government, we are all called to service. I would even say called to selflessness. The Bible teaches us that if we give generously, a good measure will be poured out to us in return. Our nation was founded on a very similar principle, namely that in order to be truly free, we must give from the heart and serve one another according to our calling and our unique talents. As for me, it has been the honor of my life to serve as your state auditor and inspector. I was the first woman to be elected to the office, but I would rather grandstand on the fact that I'm the first person to lead this agency in over 30 years who has performed audits across the state at every level of government. My first job 28 years ago was at the county treasurer's office down in Wilburton, Oklahoma. I watched ranchers and farmers come in to pay their property taxes, and I knew right then that what's collected from the citizens must be kept to a minimum and every dime spent according to the law. Since that time, I've watched that same thing play out in all 77 counties, and that's made me very passionate about protecting taxpayers from waste, fraud, and abuse. After all, it's not government money, it is our money, and we pay taxes for the benefit of good government. Now, whether at the federal level or right here in Oklahoma, we've all been hearing a lot about government efficiency lately. And when I hear Doge, all I can think is, hey, we government auditors were Doge before Doge was cool. Now, although the state auditor's office is a part of government, we stand on the side of taxpayers. And as auditor, I report directly to you so that you can hold elected officials accountable for what they do with your money. That doesn't always make me popular among the other state agencies. After all, we auditors know where the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking, of course. But even so, when there's a firestorm up at 23rd and Lincoln, our state capital, who do you think they call? The state auditor. For instance, in 2022, Governor Stitt asked me to investigate Tulsa public schools at the instigation of 2 school board members who were not getting answers to basic questions about finances from administrators. What we found was shocking. In Tulsa, tens of millions of taxpayer dollars were flowing into dozens of private, for-profit education consulting firms with seemingly little or no oversight. Now, that money could have gone directly into the classroom, but the decision of a few key administrators cheated students and teachers out of needed resources. Under former Superintendent Gist, Tulsa Public Schools spent at least $29 million on consultants. And at a time when around 10% of students were testing at grade level, TPS paid a minimum of $37 million to community partners. Most were hired as part of the district's Social Emotional Learning Initiative. Now, administrators also spent at least $35 million on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion related projects, a major priority for the former superintendent. She promised that a focus on social emotional learning and DEI would boost test scores. They did not. The district's accounting records were full of vague descriptions, inconsistencies, and errors. In our test sample alone, we found over 1,400 financial discrepancies at every step in the purchasing process. Now, as you can see, certain companies scored multi-million-dollar contracts, and contracts were full of jargon like dimensional learning, inclusivity, and social awareness. Now, that kind of language makes it very difficult to determine what services, if any, vendors actually rendered. For instance, one vendor was hired to strengthen system-level alignment to strategic priorities. Well, that's a little what I call word salad, but it's the only information we have to explain a payment of over $500,000 to a vendor. Another vendor, the Leadership Consultancy, received over $848,000 to coach 79 district employees. That means the vendor was paid $10,740 for each employee she coached. Other vendors appeared to have special access to contracts. At least $25 million was spent in violation of competitive bidding requirements. Now, there were also conflicts of interest, the most serious of which involved TPS's Executive Director of Bond and Energy Management, who was the primary gatekeeper for construction contracts at TPS. It appears that for years, in plain sight, using his TPS email account, the bond director leveraged his position to generate a very lucrative subcontracting pipeline to his personal business, M&G Consulting Services. TPS administrators also went to great lengths to hide unauthorized expenditures from the school board. That includes over $500,000 in bonuses for administrators, most of whom were already making six-figure salaries. One such employee, the Deputy Superintendent Paula Shannon, received a retention bonus that was within $5,000 of a new teacher's annual salary at the time. Now, meanwhile, former Superintendent Gist was very outspoken about the need for teacher raises in Tulsa and throughout Oklahoma. In fact, she joined the 2018 teacher walkout. Well, I happen to agree we do need to support our teachers, and that's why I question her decision to spend $29 million on consultants or $500,000 on administrative bonuses. Now, without a doubt, DEI spending is one of the most difficult categories to gain any clarity on, and that's not unique to Tulsa Public Schools. As the statements on the screen attest, equity was a major priority for Dr. Gist. However, misleading jargon in contracts and invoices often concealed DEI expenditures. You should know that the $35 million worth of DEI-related expenditures that we confirmed for the audit report is likely only a fraction of what TPS actually spent for DEI under Dr. Gist's tenure. In reality, something like $75 million is probably a better estimate. Now, as for the amount, we have very little data from other states to compare it with. That's because our audit appears to be a first of its kind in the nation. There are no other deep dive investigations into DEI expenditures within an independent school district. Nationwide, no one really knows how much schools are spending on DEI, but I believe that what we've accomplished at Tulsa can serve as blueprints for districts across the country. Now, given the systemic lack of purchasing controls at TPS, it's not surprising that one employee, Devin Fletcher, was able to misappropriate close to $1 million by exploiting personal ties with 5 of the district vendors, all consultants who had not been properly vetted. The employee has since pled guilty to wire fraud and is serving a 30-month prison sentence. However, the real tragedy is that all the millions paid out to private companies and nonprofits could have gone into the classroom for books, one-on-one tutoring, or teacher raises. Instead, administrators distributed the money to vendors. And in many cases, we have no idea how these vendors serve the needs of the students and teachers. What we do have are Tulsa's test scores. Under former Superintendent Gist, reading and math scores continued to decline. Only 7% of students tested at grade level in school year 23. That was Gist's final year at TPS. Now, at the end of the day, any dollar wasted in education is cheating a child out of needed resources, and we have to make sure that those resources get to the students and teachers in the classroom. The TPS audit showed us just how easy it could be to manipulate OCAS, that's the Oklahoma Cost Accounting System, That's the platform school districts use to report their expenditures. The system is simply not designed to catch financial misappropriation. This was something I learned during my first year in office during the audit of Epic Charter Schools. That investigation revealed just how vulnerable education dollars are and how easy it can be to hide misappropriation under administrative cost. During the years we audited, the founders of Epic Charter Schools siphoned off 30% of the school's revenues, which were 100% funded by taxpayers. The founders accrued $69 million for management services, which their for-profit company did not provide, and $145 million for the Student Learning Fund, collecting approximately $1,000 per student every year from taxpayers. That money was used in part as a slush fund for political donations. One of the smoking guns we found was a falsified invoice citing food service management for the one-on-one, the online school. Of the $69 million paid to the founders for management services, they split $55 million between themselves and poured much of the remaining $14 million into legal fees. Now, we still don't know what happened to all of the $145 million put into the Student Learning Fund, but both founders frequently maxed out to political candidates and used PACs to fund campaigns via dark money. They even sought to leverage political donations to discredit my audit. Now, thankfully, voters saw through that. And I have to say, I never anticipated the political opposition I received as a result of Epic. But like any good CPA, I rose to the occasion. Now, I always say, whenever Netflix buys the rights to the Epic audit story, I want Sandra Bullock to play the part of the auditor. Now, ultimately, everything we reported was confirmed by Epic's CFO after he accepted a plea bargain and testified against his former bosses in exchange for no jail time. The founders faced charges of embezzlement, racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy, and the Attorney General assures us that he is eager to pursue prosecution as soon as possible. These school audits have taught me a lot about education spending in Oklahoma, and I believe it's time for a new level of transparency in school districts. The fact of the matter is, local school boards make the vast majority of education spending decisions. No one is holding school board members accountable for financial decisions or academic performance. Citizens should easily be able to access online school financial records, a detailed list of expenditures, and meeting agendas with votes cast by the governing school board. Now, it's also time to rethink how schools are audited. I have a whole list of financial concerns that school auditors are not required to look at. The truth is, Oklahoma is never going to attract the kind of economic growth we all hope for if our education outcomes don't improve. The same thing is true for our healthcare system. If we think about our state's budget, 80% of it goes to fund education and healthcare. Yet in both categories, Oklahoma consistently scores close to dead last in the nation in terms of outcomes. Things aren't any better at the national level. The national debt is now over the $37 trillion mark. Unfortunately, the time to address this issue was 10 years ago, when Dr. Coburn was warning us about the $18 trillion in federal debt that we had back in 2015. Well, now that number's doubled, but lawmakers in Washington could barely even pull themselves together to approve $9 billion in cuts for U.S. aid and NPR. Lawmakers are set to make some votes within the next few days that would maintain current spending levels and programs dating to the Biden era in order to avoid a government shutdown. Republicans have held a majority in both houses since January, but many have not demonstrated they are committed to necessary spending cuts. The amount that we pay in interest each year already eclipses the military defense budget. In a few years, it will eclipse Medicaid spending. The truth is, America's debt time bomb is never going to be fixed from the top down. Billions of federal dollars pour through state agencies every year, and ultimately, only the states can clean up their own wasteful spending. Medicaid's a good place to start. On February 5th, the DOGE team released a $100 billion finding exposing fraudulent enrollments into the Medicaid program. Well, we've also seen a lot of problems with Medicaid eligibility right here in Oklahoma. In 2019, we conducted a first-of-its-kind audit of Medicaid eligibility. In Oklahoma, the program was administered by the Healthcare Authority, which is the agency we audited. Now, based on that audit, we projected that, as statistically projected, that as much as $1.6 billion went to recipients whose income had never been verified. And we confirmed that Oklahoma spent close to $30 million on claims paid on behalf of ineligible recipients. Now, in fact, 37% of MAGI applicants were approved without proper verification of their self-reported income. Now, these practices have contributed to 1 in 4 Oklahomans being enrolled in Medicaid. If the program continues to expand, it will be in danger of collapsing altogether. Medicaid does not have unlimited resources, and costs are rising significantly every year. Furthermore, we may begin to see what I believe are necessary cuts at the federal level in coming years. Previously, the federal government covered 90% of the Medicaid expansion cost, leaving only 10% for the state to pay. In the not too distant future, we could be facing something like an 80-20 or a 60-40 split. Oklahoma can't afford to absorb 40% of Medicaid costs, and we need to enforce the existing income requirements now to make sure that the program will continue to be available for those who need it in the future. Now, I wish I could say that the state's inept administration of Medicaid was an anomaly, but we are finding catastrophic, system-wide failure of financial controls across multiple state agencies. A lot of this began with the pandemic. One of the reasons our country is in $37 trillion in debt is due to a massive surge in federal spending, which originally came as a response to the pandemic, but which is continuing today. In Oklahoma, spending doubled overnight, going from around $7 billion in federal expenditures every year to roughly $14 billion. The federal money always comes with strings attached, and the U.S. government mandates that I audit all federal grants over a certain threshold according to a specific formula. I release these findings every year in the federal single audit report. The audit is to ensure that federal grant money is spent in compliance with federal guidelines. And the term question cost, those are any expenditures that do not comply with federal statutes, regulations, or terms of conditions, and can't be traced by receipts or other substantiating documentation or appear improper. Now, the reason why this is so important is that the federal government can demand a refund from the state of Oklahoma for every dollar of question cost. And about a month ago, we released our single audit for the fiscal year of 2023. For expenditures dating to 2023, question costs totaled $93.4 million. Now, just to put this into perspective, before the pandemic, Oklahoma's question costs routinely averaged around $5 million a year. After the pandemic, the average has been closer to $30 million per year. So while we have seen a substantial rise in question cost ever since COVID, $93.4 million is an unprecedented number. The most significant question costs are tied to 2 state agencies. OMES, that's the Office of Management and Enterprise Services, that's kind of like the state's checkbook agency, and then Oklahoma DHS, the Department of Human Services. Now, with regard to OMES's question costs, the feds are now taking steps to hold Oklahoma accountable. In April, the U.S. Treasury directed the state to repay $1.6 million in question costs from fiscal year 21. The demand for a refund is directly tied to the amount that a local nonprofit retained as an unallowed management fee during its administration of the Federal Emergency Rental Assistance Program. I'm going to call that ERA. Now, the nonprofit was originally one of two tasked with administering rental assistance in Oklahoma. OMES awarded the nonprofit a no-bid contract and the bulk of the ERA funds. Federal regulations require OMES to competitively bid federal grants. That helps ensure that only the most qualified candidates who will provide the best service for the best price receive the contract. OMES decided not to enforce this procedure, which enabled a nonprofit to administer more than $343 million of our tax money as emergency rental assistance. Now, ERA funds were originally set aside to offset rent and utility costs for those Oklahomans impacted by COVID. In the process of distributing aid, OMES allowed the nonprofit to collect more than 15 million tax dollars as a management fee. Now, OMES does not seem to have asked any questions when the nonprofit reported this unallowed fee as an administrative cost. Administrative costs are simply overhead expenditures required for the nonprofit to run the ERA program. This includes things like payroll. The feds had very clear guidelines for administrative cost. The nonprofit could only retain grant funds for actual operating expenses related to ERA. Each expenditure had to be backed up by receipts, invoices, or other proof. Now, normally under these conditions, a state agency would reimburse the vendor for its actual cost only, ensuring that no tax money was used for unallowed administrative expenses. However, OMES decided to advance lump sum payments, and in fiscal year 21-22, the amount that OMES provided was well in excess of what the nonprofit required to run the ERA program. OMES made no attempt to recover the excess money and return it to the feds as the grant required. Meanwhile, the nonprofit was permitted to retain the money and call it a management fee. And in effect, it appears as though OMES allowed the nonprofit to levy a surcharge on taxpayers. By the end of 2022, the management fee already exceeded $10 million. In fiscal year 23, the nonprofit retained another $5.5 million in management fees, leading to a total of $15.7 million. Now, I issued multiple warnings to OMES about this issue. However, a director at OMES appears to have encouraged the nonprofit to continue collecting the management fee. Meanwhile, other administrators at OMES did nothing to correct the situation despite our repeated warnings. Given that the feds have asked for $1.6 million, which corresponds to the amount in management fees collected in 2021, it stands to reason that they will eventually demand reimbursement for the entire management fee. That means the state is potentially liable to pay back at least $15.7 million to the federal government. Not the nonprofit paying back the $15.7 million, we, the taxpayers of Oklahoma, paying back the $15.7 million. Furthermore, in allowing the management fee, OMES deprived thousands of Oklahomans of services that they had already paid for. If OMES had provided proper oversight of ERA funds, then more than 7,600 additional Oklahoman households may have received rental assistance they needed. Now, sadly, in terms of dollars and cents, OMES does not have the largest amount of question cost in this year's single audit. You'll notice that the largest amount of question cost pertains to the Oklahoma Department of Human Services. $63.6 million in question costs can be traced to that agency for fiscal year 23 alone. The vast majority of this amount derives from the agency's mismanagement of a COVID-era block grant for daycares. Now, since March of 2020, DHS has received $791 million under the umbrella of the Federal Child Care Development Grant. And one of the primary purposes of the grant was to help child care facilities cover normal operating expenses like payroll and rent during the pandemic. The grant also allowed DHS to create unique supplemental programs tailored to the child care needs right here in our state. Now, during interviews, we were told that 4 people at DHS, the former agency director, his chief of staff, the former CFO, and the former director of child care services decided how all that money was to be spent. The federal government sent this money to the states and gave great leeway to the states in terms of how they deployed it. DHS did not put strong guidelines on how daycares were to use the funds, nor did it conduct any financial monitoring of child care development. As a result, bad actors were able to game the system at taxpayers' expense. One recipient who operated a daycare out of their private home used the money to install granite countertops in their kitchen. In fact, there were several instances of home daycares taking child care development funds and using them for lavish bath or kitchen remodels, some costing between $30,000 and $40,000. Another recipient spent $20,000 to pay off a Cadillac. Now, we intended to question those expenditures. However, when we expressed our concern to the feds, they said almost any purchases, even those that appear unnecessary or wasteful, would be permitted as long as it could be construed as having a remote connection to childcare. A Cadillac, they said, could be used for transportation. So, per the federal government's advice, we did not question granite countertops or Cadillacs. There's no better example of DHS's financial mismanagement of child care development than the Child Care Desert Grant Program, an initiative meant to expand child care in counties that could not meet the demand. In theory, the program would provide crucial startup money for new daycares or expanding daycares to cover things like minor construction projects. In practice, a child care facility could get up to $5,000 per child as a lump sum payment based on their potential capacity for enrollment, which was based entirely on square footage. For the Child Care Desert Grant Program, we ultimately had to question 75% of the expenditures included in our test sample alone. We also found evidence of misappropriation of funds in 10% of the facilities tested. The single largest distribution of Desert Grant funds was to one of the co-founders of a curriculum company. To maintain anonymity with regard to an ongoing investigation, I will refer to this individual as Applicant 1. Applicant 1 is married to the former Director of Child Care Services at DHS. She is one of the 4 individuals who helped structure all of the child care development initiatives, and she would have had access to and final authority over her husband's company's application. Despite the glaring conflicts of interest, DHS advanced more than $2 million to Applicant 1. Applicant 1 did not operate a daycare. He ran an after-school program out of 2 schools, both of which allowed him to utilize their facilities at no charge. At one site in Oklahoma City, DHS determined that Applicant 1 could accommodate up to 283 children based on the square footage. 283 children. And he was approved to receive a $1.4 million distribution for that location specifically. A DHS employee noticed the number was too high, recalculated the square footage, which affected the enrollment capacity, and determined that Applicant 1 should receive a smaller amount of money. However, weeks later, someone at DHS approved Applicant 1 for the payment at the original capacity of 283 kids, and he received a distribution of $1.4 million. That's a significant overpayment. There are only a few people at DHS who had the authority to override the revised payment. The Director of Child Care Services, Applicant 1's wife, was one of them. Furthermore, there's strong evidence that Applicant 1's program was not set up to serve anywhere near 283 children. According to DHS's safety checks at the OKC location, on any given day, only 10 to 12 students attended Applicant 1's after-school program. As of February 2025, Applicant 1 had spent around $1.3 million of the $2 million he originally received. And according to the report Applicant 1 submitted to my auditors, 93% of the program's total expenditures went to payroll and administrative costs, both of which are not allowed under the terms of the Desert Grant. The school received no portion of those funds. Of that $1.3 million total expenditures, the 3 founders of the curriculum company split more than $815,000 among themselves. At least 60% of the after-schools program's expenditures went to the co-founders. By the way, in an interview, applicant 1 also clarified that the after-school program would not continue once the Desert Grant funds ran out. Do you want me to, Terry, you want me to pause or keep going?
We'll leave that up to you. If you need to project it. We're going to be able to get it back up, or is it? Oh, you're on.
Okay. Okay. By the way, in an interview, applicant 1 also declared that they would not be continuing once the Desert Grant funds ran out. So by the terms of the grant, applicant 1 did not qualify for these funds. However, the former director of DHS and his team seemed to have made no attempt to provide any oversight that would protect taxpayer dollars. Now, despite the state spending $43 million taxpayer dollars on child care desert programs in 23, enrollment capacity in desert counties increased by less than 2% in 23 and 24. Even worse, we saw a decrease of 14 child care facilities in desert counties. As of 2024, 27 of 34 counties saw either a decrease or no change in total enrollment capacity, the number of facilities available, or both. And our test sample revealed a similar pattern. At least 20 Desert Grant recipients have permanently closed their doors. That alone amounts to $2 million that did not support the expansion of child care in desert counties. At the end of the day, DHS did not provide the oversight needed to ensure that the grant funds had a maximum impact across our state. And keep in mind, that was just one of the several programs contributing to DHS's total question cost of $63.6 million. Now, current Director Cartmel is making positive changes. He was just appointed just last year after all of this that had already transpired. And I also want to say right here that those funds were meant to help daycares so that people could get back to work that would help our economy. And our state did not put the right guidelines on that to make sure that that was what happened. Now, I want to end by saying this. Our nation's $37 trillion in debt. And it's easy to lay blame on our legislators in Washington, but America's in a debt spiral that will never pull out from the top down. The state has not done its best to ensure that your tax dollars provide a maximum benefit for Oklahoma and its people. What we found time and time again was that Oklahomans were denied services even when they qualified for them because grant money had been abused. And if the mismanagement continues, your state taxes will go up, your federal taxes will go up, and government services will plummet. Oklahoma's Constitution mandates that the state provides services related to public safety and law enforcement, public education, roads, bridges, and infrastructure, due process under the law, and general welfare. Now, politicians will debate on exactly what services citizens are entitled to within these broad, constitutionally mandated categories. But we can all agree that state agencies entrusted with public dollars have a solemn responsibility to prevent bad actors from taking advantage of the taxpayers. That's a little bit about what I've been doing for you as your state auditor. I'm very concerned about the way funds have been managed in this state. And we still have more work to do on that, and I'm still working strong for you throughout the rest of my term as state auditor. But I am term limited. I cannot run for state auditor again. And I know that I still have a lot to offer this state. There's more work to be done, and that's why I have filed for the office of Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell is also term limited and will not be running for that office. To tell you a little bit about who I am, my husband Steve and I make our home in Colgate. I've lived there for 52 years. I love rural Oklahoma. I can leave the capital and go back and spend my weekends with real people who have real problems. And it inspires me to go back and fight for you because there are things that our state is facing that we need to fix. I am a CPA. I have 28 years of government auditing experience. I have audited at the state level, at the county level, at the city level, and at the school district level. I'm the only one in this race who understands how all that money works together and how we need to fix some things so that we are not duplicating services and that we are really delivering services back to the people. Let's talk for a second about the responsibility of Lieutenant Governor. Now, Matt Pinnell has championed our state with love and excitement. I consider him a dear friend. Tourism was a big part of what his platform was. Well, we know now that the Tourism Commission is really an advisory commission only. Even though he chairs that committee, he has no hiring or firing power over the director of that agency. That agency is just under maybe around $750 million a year agency. The commission doesn't get to provide a lot of oversight. They can only make suggestions. But the Lieutenant Governor also sits on some very important boards and commissions. I sit on 2 of those right now with him. One is the Commissioner of the Land Office. We oversee a $3 billion sacred trust fund for public education. The other board, and we also manage 750,000 acres on that board. I've sat on that board now for almost 7 years with him. Another very important board the Lieutenant Governor sits on is the State Board of Equalization. That board is responsible for making sure we have a balanced budget in the state of Oklahoma and certifying how much money we have to spend so that legislators craft that budget each year. Another important board the Lieutenant Governor sits on is the Capital Improvements Authority. That authority board issues and oversees millions of dollars in bond issues for infrastructure projects. All of those boards the Lieutenant Governor sits on are heavily finance related. As your next Lieutenant Governor, I have several things that I think I could work on. I have a deep understanding of our tax structure in Oklahoma, whether it's our income tax structure or whether it's your property tax structure right here in your county. I know what we need to fix education. I will help fix education and get us out of the 50th ranking. I know what needs to be done to fix our healthcare agencies, the same agencies that keep losing millions of dollars. We've got to get that under control. We're bleeding money and services aren't being returned to the people. Another thing that's also very important to me, we've seen our governor offer tax incentives to out-of-state companies that come in. My platform will be to invest in our homegrown companies, those companies that are here despite the economic downturns we sometimes see, the companies that are here that share our same Oklahoma values. We have got to level the playing field with Arkansas and Texas. We are continuing to see those states thrive while Oklahoma gets left behind. I believe that's because we are not managing our money in the best way possible for our citizens. I mentioned earlier that 80% of every dollar we spend goes to fund education and healthcare, yet we are last in the nation for outcomes. We've got some work to do there. I talked about the ERA grant and the DHS issues. That emergency rental assistance grant was given to Oklahoma so that people who were off work wouldn't lose their job and not be able to pay their rent and utility assistance. It was meant to keep our economy going. The DHS child care grant was meant to be utilized in such a manner where people could get back to work so we could keep our economy going. Yet we see the findings that I reported this past year, how we didn't quite succeed with that. I want to see Oklahoma succeed. I think there is something for everyone in Oklahoma. We have some of the greatest venues here. We have some of the greatest landscapes here in Oklahoma. And most of all, we have the greatest people. We're not afraid of hard work, and we want our state to succeed. Part of the Lieutenant Governor's job is to be an influencer. Well, before you can truly influence, you've got to have the knowledge. And folks, there is no one who understands Oklahoma and all the money, the $35 billion a year that flows through state government, better than Cindy Byrd. I want to point out, too, I know the OK2 organization endorses. Well, I'm not a legislator, so I'm not on the same level playing field as the legislators who can pass bills and get an A+ rating. I do have an A rating, but let me tell you what I've done to help your specific issues. I joined a group called the State Financial Officers Foundation several years ago. And on that group, I've joined with close to 24 other state financial officers who have been fighting back against debanking I don't know if you're familiar with the term ESG, where big corporations have taken our pension funds and our other state investments, and then they've decided to divert those funds to interests that didn't always align with making the most money, getting the greatest rate of return. One of the issues that some of those individuals took were to debank anyone who was a gun manufacturer. If you can't take our guns, the next best step is to hit the gun manufacturers, make sure they don't have the capital they need to borrow money, expand their facilities. I stood with those 24 financial officers, and we demanded that this be stopped. We worked at the national level, and just this past July, President Trump issued an executive order stating that that would happen no more. So I want you to know that I have worked right alongside at the national level, not at the state level, although I'm here to help if they need it, making sure that didn't happen with our funds, our investment funds, and we fought back against these big banks, debanking anyone who had any kind of business related to gun manufacturing. Two more things I'd like to tell you about at the national level that I've accomplished. One, I received the National Forensic Audit Award for my audit of Epic Charter Schools, even at a time when I received pushback from the legislators on whether or not it was accurate. Well, 15 felony charges later, and a CFO who has made the statement that confirming the audit report, I don't think we need to talk about that anymore. The second thing was my national award that I received, the Dr. Tom Coburn Transparency in Government Award. And it is, it is the award that I hold most dear to my heart because I was a great fan of Dr. Coburn and his push to limit federal spending. So with that, I'm asking for your support for my run for Lieutenant Governor. We have big issues facing us in the next few years. We know cuts are coming from the federal government, and when they do, somebody's got to be here at the state level to help our legislators and our next governor figure out how we're going to cut back and still fund core services of government. And again, there is no one who knows this better than Cindy Byrd. So with that, I would ask you for your vote, and I would remind you that Byrd's the word for Lieutenant Governor in 2026. And now I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Give her a hand, folks. And before we get to the internal questions, I've got some questions from online. So I'm going to jump in front of everybody since I'm an a-hole, but you all already know that. Anyway, question from Facebook, actually. Tony Canaday. It's a long question. Billions of tax dollars flow through 420 communities and 77 counties with little to no oversight. As a state auditor, why have you not lobbying, I'm just reading this verbatim, why have you not lobbying legislators for more manpower to ensure Oklahoma's taxes are not being wasted? Oklahoma infrastructures in many communities are in a lot of trouble with outdated water and sewer lines. What is the solution to ensure municipal, county, state taxes, fees, and permits are not going to waste? Long question.
That is a long question. So Tony, I want to answer this because I know we've worked with you specifically through many questions in your community. The state auditor does not have the authority to conduct city audits or school district audits without an official request from the governor, the attorney general, the district attorney, or even a citizen's petition at the local level. The state auditor's office, we have always asked for additional funds. I'm going to walk quickly through the past 6.5 years as state auditor. I was given additional funds back in 2020. That did go to hire some more people. We've had a huge turnover rate in the auditor's office because, quite frankly, it's a lot of hard work, and it's hard to find hard workers. Right after that, I released the audit of Epic Charter Schools, and there was a push from the Senate to strip me of my auditing powers. So despite doing a really good job on an audit and exposing where millions, tens of millions of dollars of education dollars were misappropriated, action was taken to try to strip me of my auditing powers. And that's something that you all should be aware of because the state auditor works for you independently and not anybody else. So just because the narrative didn't align with what some wanted, there was no cause for retaliation. Now let's talk about what's happening at our municipal level. There are 570 something, maybe 74, 574 towns and our cities and towns in Oklahoma. And what we're seeing right now, we went through a period of high inflation, high interest rates, people couldn't afford groceries, and whenever we see periods like that in history, you will see fraud and crime increase. We've seen a blow up of those things across the state of Oklahoma. My office is now tasked with, whenever we get these audit requests, we are more of a triage unit. We are trying to get to the places where we know money is actively being misappropriated, possibly embezzled, to try to stop those funds from going out the door. I don't have enough manpower, and Tony, I would love for you to join in that fight with me to help make sure that office is properly funded. 15 years ago, the total budget of the auditor's office, I think, was close to $15 million. When I came in, that budget was $10 million. So you can see the drastic cuts that were given to that office, and the retaliation I explained, and where we are in terms of finding people. We keep ads out constantly trying to hire more auditors, but you've got to have somebody that wants to be a CPA with that kind of experience to go out to do investigative audits, and we just do not have those people in marketplaces. I sympathize greatly with some of these cities and towns. We've got to make some improvements there. I have ideas that I would like to lobby for as Lieutenant Governor to help our cities and towns be more effective and promote economic growth, but it's going to start with taking care of the money, putting laws in place that really matter and mean something, that will put guardrails up to protect it. And whenever we have that and we have increased transparency, we'll see those number of issues at the city level start to decrease.
So you are in fact lobbying for more manpower?
Yes, I have asked for additional appropriations.
I think that was the main point of our question, so I want to make sure that
yes,
that
and
you are involved with
and
that.
I do remember that Tony has had an issue too.
Oh, you
so,
know Tony?
well, I know that she's been someone working with our office. So she's
okay.
had questions before, so I just elaborated on her previous questions.
And on municipalities, I have a question myself. Red Rock, was 10 months, a year ago, there was a story you released, something near $500,000 gone from I figured it up, it was over $1,500 per person in Red Rock, including women and children, everybody. Is there, this kind of thing, I keep hearing about this. We had the mayor's wife in Blackwell embezzled all the money from their softball league, probably, 4 years ago. And I don't think anything was ever done to her. I haven't heard any follow-up. I know the investigation, it's out of your hands now that you've submitted the numbers. Are you aware of anything going on for prosecutions or indictments in Red Rock?
Most of the white-collar prosecutions, I'm going to give a shout-out to your DA here, most of the prosecutions across the state for white-collar crime come right from this district attorney.
By the way, he sent me a text today. He said he's sorry he can't be here. He's in a parade in Morrison.
Yes.
I forgot to tell you that earlier. I'm glad you reminded me.
He also sent me that text message, but I would say that the Red Rock situation was tragic. It was a ridiculous amount of money for such a small town of 200 people. And while we were there trying to clean up that mess, the next one that came in had already started misappropriating funds. So again, I mean, I'm the auditor, and I can tell you what happened in history, but you as citizens have to be involved, you have to be vigilant, you have to be watching. I just come in after the damage is already done. You've got to elect good people and ask questions and demand answers.
Amen. Chris, you had a question?
Yeah, well, my curiosity was finding all these billions, whatever, of misappropriated funds. Was there any prosecution to speak of? Did we get anything back?
You know, this is the question I always dread coming, and I know it's going to come. I'll leave it to Chris. So as the auditor, I'm just a reporting agency. All I get to do is report, and I try to do so in such a concise way that everyone can understand and then go hold people accountable. The bad part about it is, it's one thing to just blatantly embezzle and we can prove it went to your bank account and you can be prosecuted. That's the simplest form of white-collar crime that someone can take action against. The waste, Sadly, there are no statutes on the book to hold bad actors responsible for waste and mismanagement, not in Oklahoma. And we need that. Those are areas that need to be shored up so that we're making sure that these funds are being used effectively for you.
And a lot of that is our fault as voters for not researching and voting the correct people to go serve under the dome.
Yes.
Jay?
You've done a good job of uncovering
Yes.
all of the mess. Now that you know who's involved in the rat nest and who the rats are, if you are elected as lieutenant governor, what powers will you have to go kill the rats?
I think a loud voice is always important. The lieutenant governor presides over the Senate. I would prefer to work with senators to help them craft legislation to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. Anything that's already happened goes straight to the Attorney General, and that's up to him as to whether or not to proceed with any kind of prosecutorial action. But as the lieutenant governor,
Let's see, who is our Attorney General now? I can't remember. Do you remember who it is? Never mind. It's Gettner Drummond. And those of you that have not seen the video of me praying at the Guthrie meeting, my prayer is, dear Lord, hear me now. Anybody but Gettner Drummond, amen. So that's me.
I think that I could use my voice as lieutenant governor to really try to straighten up some things in Oklahoma that need to be set in place to make sure our state government is running effectively. I don't know that anyone has that knowledge to really say, these are the things we need to fix to make sure Oklahomans are getting services or that we're not wasting money and potentially having to pay it back to the federal government.
Thank you for explaining in detail what the lieutenant governor's duties were. All I knew was tourism because of Matt, and that they preside over the Senate, but they don't have any power to do anything there. So I had no idea they were involved in that many different boards and so forth.
Yes, and think about, just one second, think about the tourism aspect as well. Matt's done a great job with tourism, and we have a director there that has a lot of experience, and I know they have plans. So other than just, overseeing and being the voice, the lieutenant governor is really the voice of the state. And I believe that whether it's trying to bring companies in, sitting down with them, talking about our tax structure, about our low cost of living, our low taxes, low regulations, there's no one better who can get into the nuts and bolts of that. And then whenever you talk about tourism, hey, I've lived here for 52 years and traveled this state from one end to the other. I love it, and I'm ready to promote it to whoever wants to hear. Yes, sir.
I believe the lieutenant governor actually has a lot of authority in the Senate. They can call forward bills to be heard. They can. They can't.
I called him. I thought the same thing. In fact, Matt was here a couple of years ago, and I specifically asked him if he'd pick up the gavel. No, I was really surprised. But they, this is according to Grok, they just basically are a figurehead in the Senate. Do you have a different view of that?
I do have a little bit of a different view of that. I do think that they have a little bit more authority than that, but I would want to make sure that I was using that authority in a respectful manner going forward, and that an attorney had clearly explained that law.
I'm going off of Grok, so for whatever that's worth, I don't pay attorneys.
I mean, our Constitution's only, that
Sixth longest in the world, I've heard.
I think I would bring it to your memory about Mary Fallon. Whenever she was lieutenant governor, she did force a vote on, was it the Work to Right initiative?
Oh, okay.
Please don't get me talking about history. I've had a lot of other numbers on my mind right now, but I think there was an incident in history.
I moved back. I didn't get back. I moved back in 27. I left Oklahoma in 1959, right after liquor got voted legal, and I moved back in 2017. So since 2018 has been kind of when I've been involved with politics. But I agree with you. I've been all over the country. The friendliest, nicest folks on the entire planet live in Oklahoma.
And we have the most freedoms, I think.
Yes, yes. A lot of that thanks to OK 2A. Yeah.
Well, while we're talking about wasting money, is the state still subsidizing these ridiculous windmills? It's the most ineffective way to make electricity that is, and there's nothing about those things that's biodegradable.
I would love to see some of the push for energy come from our natural gas, which we have in abundance. So to answer your question about the subsidies for wind farms, as far as the ad valorem exempt manufacturing tax, that was done away with several years ago. But that it may still be tapering off, because once you got on there, you were approved for 5 years, and I think it just happened maybe 3 years ago.
I can't believe they're still putting them up. The concrete companies must love them.
Unfortunately, a lot of that is federal. Under the Bidens, there were federal grants, and those federal grants run 10 to 15 years. And some of those people got so much money, they're gonna be able to put up wind turbines for the next 10 years.
I can make more electricity rubbing a balloon on my pants.
Yeah, I mean, it's a ridiculous, and if you ever drive over to Enid, on the way into Enid on 64 on the right-hand side, where they prepare everything, it's huge. It's a mile long and a mile
A
deep.
gigantic yard there.
Yeah,
Well, and when these wear out, these companies are gonna go bankrupt, and all that, however many hundreds of cubic yards of concrete is poured for a base, and all of that stuff is still gonna be there, and I will bet you anything that the companies that put them up, they're not gonna be around to have to pay for it.
Like I say, those towers are not biodegradable.
No, nothing is. No. Joe?
A comment on that, I believe that in some recent federal legislation, that those tax subsidies are going to come to an end. I think it was,
They already have.
it may have been the big, it's from the federal level. That
yes.
It was
some
part of the
sort
big, beautiful
sign, they
bill.
can't continue. He stopped it.
Now-
But the problem, Joe, is under the Biden administration, they granted all of those, and they are bound by those contractual
Yes,
obligations,
there's still-
and they go
there's
out for
still-
10 to 15 years.
Yeah, there's still.
It's ridiculous.
time left on
I
it.
mean,
Thank God we've got Donald Trump
Yeah.
in the White House, or none of this stuff would be happening.
it's
A
so
lot of
mad.
people are upset because they aren't happening fast enough, but he's a lot smarter man than me. I'm gonna just back him on whatever he wants to do, because he's our only hope, folks, to save our republic.
Yeah, that's-
More questions?
Cindy, the presentation that you had at the beginning was fantastic. It looked like you put in a lot of work into that. Do you use that, you're obviously on the campaign trail, and I'm trying to find a delicate way of putting this without trying to sound too hateful or whatever, but people may construe you using state resources and stuff for your campaign. And do you find it difficult to kind of delineate between the two?
Well, and let me be very clear. I don't take mileage for these things. And the PowerPoint's already created whenever we do our press conference to let people know about the report. So there's no additional hours spent on that. And these are my personal notes. So what resources would I be using to I think that's great, because I think I want to hear your thoughts, because I don't ever want to be accused of using state resources. So press conference, personal notes, and my own mileage.
Right, because I wondered the same thing about like other elected officials that are currently in this position, and then they're still in that position, but then campaigning for their next job. And, you know, how do you separate the two to where there's no appearance of any kind of impropriety, you know?
She just said she doesn't, and she can't answer for other candidates.
Well, yeah,
I can't answer for other candidates. I think what's important to know is that whenever I'm invited to speak as both, nothing is charged back to my office. Not time, not mileage, not any of my resources. That's the safest way. I'm the auditor. I'm the person that has to be getting it right.
That's kind of the reason I asked.
Yes.
You're the
Yeah.
person.
I never drive a state vehicle, ever, have not since I became state auditor. And the only mileage I ever claim is if it is solely an official speaking. And even then, I never charge it from Colgate. I charge it from the 23rd and Lincoln,
Right.
the shortest route. Well, I charge the shortest. I went to McCurtain County the other day and I spoke as both auditor and candidate. Didn't charge a single thing for that, and would have never. If it had been solely official, I would have charged from Colgate to Ida Bell, not from Oklahoma City to Ida Bell. We have a lot of safety checks in my office. I would be happy to share those with anybody out here who is a candidate currently holding office to make sure they aren't abusing the trust of the people. Yeah.
And I've been following Oklahoma politics very diligently since 2018. I've never even heard a whisper of anything disreputable about you or about your office. And I know enough about the Capitol down there that if there was anything somebody could grab on, they would have done it.
Right.
So that's something I've watched, because I know how important an auditor is, because that's the only person that's keeping an eye on the money for our benefit. And you've been pure as the driven snow ever since you've been in office, and I've been looking and listening for things that might have been negative about you. So
Thank you for that,
it's
Terry.
one thing we don't have to worry about.
And I always appreciate those questions, because if you
question.
have it, somebody else probably has it, and I want the chance to explain exactly what I'm doing. So, love that.
Go ahead, that's fine.
Okay, Robert, this is our representative from the, what?
I'm asking this question as a constituent.
Okay, as a constituent.
What is your view on administrative level consolidation? Because the average superintendent in Oklahoma amongst the over 100 districts is around $100,000. That roughly equates to anywhere from 15 to 30% of the education budget alone between all the administrative costs associated with that. What is your view on administrative level consolidation of those superintendent and administrative level positions?
So, you hear a lot about school consolidation, and I don't know if you know this. This is just a little side trivia to add as I'm answering that question. I'm from Colgate. I'm a Colgate Wildcat, and our biggest rival and the longest standing football rival in Oklahoma is the Boggy Bottom Bowl. And we play in that against the Atoka Wampus Cats. Now, you're never going to convince me that I need to be part of the Atoka Wampus Cats, but I would absolutely be open to financial expert teams being in a regional area to provide real good financial forecasting, budgeting, making sure schools are in compliance with grants. I think there's a lot of areas to explore there, and that is something I've already been talking about openly.
Is it possible to consolidate administration but not consolidate the actual schools?
We are a republic, and our state is a laboratory for experimentation, and we have the opportunity to look at other states and how they do things and try to figure out how we can be best. That's another thing I'm very interested in, is seeing how we can eliminate so much waste. We have so much waste in the state government as well. I mean, we need to do a top-down look at how we can quit being duplicative in our services and really be efficient and get out of the taxpayer's pocket and figure out how we're gonna really help Oklahomans.
Jay, you're
Yeah,
up.
Cindy, in your presentation, you started with GIST and then moved to the other group of 4 scoundrels. How many of them are being prosecuted, and to what degree have they been prosecuted? Is GIST being prosecuted?
Okay, so that's really a question for the Attorney General, but I can tell you what I know about it. But
Okay.
just keep in mind it's secondhand information, and the
Okay.
best information would come from the Attorney General. So with Epic, I released that audit October 1st of 2020. We're coming up on October 1st of 2025.
Yeah.
And we have a CFO who has already confirmed everything in exchange for a plea deal. This currently in a preliminary hearing. The preliminary hearing has lasted, I don't know, is it a year and a half this has been going on? I don't understand the delays, but at least it is headed that way. In the case of Tulsa Public Schools, we just did the audit. We turned that over to the Attorney General's office, and we are now back in there looking at a couple of additional things. So I'm hopeful. When it came to the one individual who had misappropriated close to $1 million, he's serving a 30-year sentence. But what's interesting to know about that, It was done in such a hurried manner that after he was sentenced and in jail, we were still finding more. So that may need to be revisited. I don't know. Again, I'm not the prosecutor. I don't have that authority. I can just keep pushing. And, you know, talking to you all about these things that I found helps you hold people accountable as well.
How did it get there? I mean, how, in your opinion, how did it get there? These people were misappropriating so many dollars. How did it happen?
Well, keep in mind that my whole point in this PowerPoint presentation today was about how easy it is to hide administrative expenditures in our current Oklahoma cost accounting system that each school has to use. It's telling me the Oklahoma cost accounting system needs a lot of work. That's something that if we really want education turned around, that's one key part of it. If you don't use your finances correctly, you're not going to get the results you want. So that is one way. And I would also encourage you to go back and look at that Epic audit report, because there was a good part in there explained how it was ignored at the State Department of Education. And whenever it was brought to their attention, it was only 1.8 million maybe. I can't remember the exact dollar amount. And because it was ignored, 4 years later, it was tens of millions more because it grew so fast.
Is that available online?
Yes, all of the audits put out by the auditor's office is available online, and if you can't find it easily, there's a search bar. As few words as possible will get you there, but if you can't find it, call us and we'll walk you through it on the phone. Yeah, so.
Joe's got a question.
I was gonna ask, the guy from Epic, that entered into a plea agreement or whatever, do you think that if he hadn't ran out of money that he would be still fighting the findings or whatever?
I mean, as the auditor, I can't speculate on that.
I was asking for
you know, that's one of the reasons
that
why.
might be a better question for the AG, but.
Everybody is you know, entitled
Yeah.
to being innocent until proven guilty in a fair trial. That's why when I talk about him confirming everything, I always immediately say in exchange for a plea deal, because this is still America.
Well, and you've got serious ethic burdens on your shoulders about all of this. So it's easily understandable there'd be some questions that you're unable to even address. So,
Well, maybe Kenner would like to come and talk to
yeah,
us.
yeah,
Oh, God.
I've got an invitation out.
He came to town
He
not
knows
too
I'm
terribly
praying
long
for
ago.
him.
He didn't tell anybody.
Chris, you got another question?
How often do you do it? What percentage of your audits come up clean?
Well, no, I'm glad you asked that, because we put out, whenever you say clean, you know, people are human, I'm human. Everybody can make small errors and we still have to report those. This is what I would hope you would judge that by. My office puts out almost 350 audits a year, and you only hear about 10 of them. So I always try to leave with some hope that there's more going right than going wrong. But the big issues that I think taxpayers need to hear about, I'm going to have a microphone in my hand and I'm going to be saying money's being misused here so that we can get it fixed, because that's something very important to me.
Answer. Very good question. I hadn't thought of that. Is that it?
Okay. Do you think that the Oklahoma Open Meetings Act kind of handcuffs school board members because they can't get together and actually really discuss things because they're subject to the Oklahoma Meetings Act? What's that?
That doesn't have anything to do with the
Well,
audit.
because this leads into like the thing with Tulsa and the audit of GPS, where you have a school board that voted to do these things upon the recommendation of a superintendent, but most of them probably didn't have any prior knowledge of half of it. So,
Okay, short answer
Yeah.
is no, I don't agree with that, because I believe that the public has a right to hear the discussions and what leads up to making a decision. However, what I could tell tell any board member at any level of government is this. One of the scariest things I did upon taking office of state auditor, because before I'm just behind the scenes auditing and I get to see everything. I get to go look at the financial documents, I get to pull anything out. So I have all the pieces to the puzzle. I found myself suddenly sitting at the table having to make decisions on, $1 million issues here, investments, whatever else. and I felt woefully unprepared, and I don't like to be unprepared. So what I did to combat that, we do have a briefing before the meeting, each one of us individually, and we had the chance to ask questions. Well, they joked that my version is the longest version, and sometimes my meetings are an hour and a half as we go over every single thing, and I'm pulling out my notes from the previous meetings because everything at CLO builds on each other to ask questions, and it takes a lot of homework to sit on that board. So it's not just something where you just show up that day and say, oh, I think I'll vote this way. You've got to really dig and do the homework for that. And then they also laugh at CLO and say from that point forward, they get the Reader's Digest version, you know, to brief people, because I'm going to ask those questions. And some of the questions I ask, not because I don't trust the people at CLO, but because we do so many land transactions and real estate transactions, I always ask two questions. Does anybody at CLO have any kind of related party issue with who we're buying from or who we're selling to? I always want to know that, and I want to ask in an open meeting where it's recorded. So those are things that I do to protect myself as a board member. Now, as a school board member, I would never walk into a meeting cold without having discussed this and had a meeting set up prior to that for someone to explain every issue. I have my meeting always the Friday before our CLO meeting the next Thursday. That way I have the weekend to think about it, to see if there are any additional items I need, and then I let them know on Monday, hey, I have more questions, I need more information. So as a board member, any board member should know that you have that right to ask for additional information and see whatever you need to make a decision.
I'll say the only time I've gone into a school board meeting where I felt informed was the one time where I got to sit in on the Property and Finance Committee meeting, because they have two board members come and sit in on that meeting and they go over everything. But after that, you know, if we get information, we just get sent this packet of like 100 pages of financials that we're expected to go through in addition to our day job. So anyway, sorry.
So can I say one more thing to him about this? I just want to say this, especially at the city and school level, if you're a board member on this, if you're on that board, you're the boss. You're in charge. You get to set policy that says, I want a meeting, an individual briefing beforehand. I want this information. If you want it on the board agenda, then you're going to have it to us a week ahead of time. We're going to have individual briefings where we can ask our questions, and then you be available to answer questions beforehand, or we're going to have a very long meeting where all of this is discussed there. But back to your original question, does the Open Meetings Act handcuff you? The reason it's there is so that the public can hear the discussions.
Oh, no, I'm all about sunshine, so, yeah.
All right, it's about time to wind up the meeting. We've got one more speaker, Robert from U.S. Law Shield. He's going to speak for just a few minutes. And personally, I'm going to go to Danny's Barbecue afterwards. If anybody wants to join me for lunch, meet me at Danny's Barbecue. You got it, Robert.
I might meet you at Danny's Barbecue. For some good barbecue. So most of you are already members, so you know who we are and what we do. For those of you that aren't, take a few minutes after the meeting and come speak to me. It's something that Joe's a member of, Terry's a member of, and Don Spencer always talks about us because of the fact that if you have to defend yourself, fist to a farm or anything in between, you don't want to be alone. And as a member, you're not going to be. Because your attorneys are coming to you on scene at that incident to keep you from going to jail. And the second peace of mind we give you is financially, because as a member, you'll never have to pay a penny for your attorneys ever. It really is something that will protect you and gives you that shield from the stories that we've heard about over the years of the good guys being drugged through the mud, the good guys being ruined financially, having to take a second mortgage, hawk all their guns and gear, sell all their property to do the very thing that we are told at a young age to protect ourselves and instructed to by the Constitution. It's not just your right, but it's your responsibility to protect yourself. And U.S. Law Shield is here to make sure that that responsibility that you take upon yourself doesn't destroy your whole life afterwards.
We've got a lot of different offers going on, so if you're not a member, please come and speak to me after the meeting. If you're also not a member, you can ask Joe about us, you can ask Terry about us, they'll tell you all about it. So I do appreciate your time, because I understand how valuable it is. Y'all came to see Terry and Miss Byrd, not me, so thank you for your ears. And I hope to see y'all after the meeting. Thank you very much.
I've been a member for about 5 years. I buy a lot of insurance. If you drive a car or truck and have insurance on it, and if you carry a piece, if you're strapped and you don't have some way to cover you there, that's as foolish as driving your truck without insurance. Because if something happens, you could be 100% righteous self-defense shooting, and they could drain you dry, especially if you're in Oklahoma County or Tulsa County. But it's just nice knowing that you got your butt covered if you do have to use a gun, God forbid. So that's my own personal endorsement for U.S. Law Shield. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Terry.